Hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Nicole Holland Show. Super excited to have my friend Stephanie Hayes here with us. And Stephanie, how's it going today?
I am doing so well. Thank you, Nicole.
You are so welcome. So let's just jump in. And I just shared your bio with my audience, but let's talk about really on a day-to-day basis, how are you supporting your clients, your audience, in like right now in the best way?
Absolutely. I am a business coach and strategist, and I work with experienced entrepreneurs who are looking to level up their business and mature the way that they are working with their own clients. And so I work with them usually in a one-on-one capacity, sometimes in a group, and we are building a framework for them to have a sustainable business that can grow.
Awesome. So how long have you been doing this in this fashion?
Formally in my coaching business for about 5 years. Informally, I've been working with small businesses and startups for the last 20. And it's been, it's been really fun to have my feet in both the small business and the corporate camp because I get to see how we can marry both together to give small business owners what they really need.
Right on. And how did you wind up like getting into the small business owner arena and doing the coaching, kind of figuring out that this is what you're meant to be doing?
Mm. I have been an entrepreneur at heart since I was even a young child, and I always knew that I wanted to own my own business. It took me a little while till I was able to finally make that happen about 15 years ago. But before that, I'd been working in startups my entire life in the technology space. And so I got a lot of exposure to seeing how small businesses and startups grow and how all the things that they need to do. And when you're in that kind of environment, you have to do all the things, you have to play all the roles, and you have to get all of that experience. So by the time I started up my own business, I already had a lot of that under my belt. And you go through your starter business and you learn a lot, and then you come out of that and you start building again. And so I've always had that entrepreneurial spirit, but along the way became more educated around business strategy and small business strategy and startup methodology and all of that. I moved into being an entrepreneur mentor at the University of British Columbia and worked with small businesses and startups who wanted to become funded for the ideas that they had. So it kind of all progressed naturally. And eventually people started asking me, can you help me with my business? Can you help me figure out what's wrong? Can you help me get to that next stage of growth? And it became really obvious that what I wanted to do was not do the work within the business itself, but help these businesses see the forest for the trees, right? Because you get stuck in your business and you get stuck knowing too much. You have the curse of the expert. So it gradually evolved to the point where I recognized what I was really good at is that bigger picture and the strategy and being able to see all the pieces working together. And so a few years ago, I actually formalized that capacity. And now I work as a coach and a strategist, helping all of these different businesses, whether they're a product business or a service business or something in between, um, establish their strategy, establish their business model, and realign their businesses so that they can implement. And I've been able to take the strategy piece as well as the execution piece and marry them together, which has been pretty unique, but also a lot of fun.
Awesome. I love that. And like, what are some of the most common things that you hear? Because you do work with different types of businesses. A lot of
Mhm.
people like really focus on service or really focus on product or really focus on whatever their thing is. But you have found a way to, I think you really focus on the foundations more than anything, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. And so these things that you've figured out over the years and along the way apply to all of them. What are some of the most common problems or questions that people come to you with?
Mm. Um, it's interesting because depending on the type of business that they are, they often have similar concerns. In a services based business, you often have people who have put so much time and energy into their client work, and they feel like they're drowning in client work. And then all of a sudden they'll end up in this sort of feast and famine. And so they are often trying to get away from being overwhelmed by client work and being overwhelmed by the amount of effort they have to put into their business in order to keep things going. So they want the consistency. They want to grow their income. They don't see how to get away from the time for money trap. I would say that's the most common on the services side. On the product side, again, depending on what type of product that these folks are trying to build, they are often trying to figure out how to get leverage and how to sell their product and how to build more scale into their business. And so they often have a bit more of a focus on the marketing side. And if they are a physical product manufacturer, then they've got this whole other realm of manufacturing, right? Which is another super interesting challenge. But what I love is being able to play in all of those spaces and come up with strategies that fit the needs of the business owner. And that's kind of what I stand for, is that every business is like a fingerprint, right? It's very different, and it needs to be different, and it needs to be aligned with who the business owner is and what they're trying to achieve.
Awesome. So you are working primarily online now, is that correct?
That's right.
And how did you wind up kind of getting into the online space?
Funny enough, I have a certificate from the university from 1998 in internet marketing. So, like the very first time that the university was offering internet marketing as a discipline, and everybody's kind of looking around going, what is that? Right. So, that has been my thing for a long, long time. And I never really made it happen, right? I wanted to, I saw the potential, I saw this really cool space emerging, and I saw how different things can be in the online space and how many opportunities there are. So when I moved into coaching, I knew that I wanted to do this in the online space. I wanted to be able to help people build these online businesses because I come from a technology background. And for me, marrying technology and business is just such a, it's the vision, right? And in the online world, you have this whole other set of tools, a whole other environment, and you leverage that. Now, I do have some offline clients, and I still continue to work with them, but for the most part, the online space is where I want to be, because it's a different vibe, it's a different medium, and it offers all sorts of different opportunities.
So you've had this degree since really the beginning, and you found your way to work virtually and online, as well as work physically with people that I'm assuming are local or that you fly to or they fly to you or what
Mhm.
have you. Um, can you remember the point in time where, like, your first website, or where you really started marketing online to work with people online virtually rather than physically?
Absolutely. And I'm cringing as we're talking, thinking about my first website. And it's actually an interesting story, because um, it's a total manifestation of exactly what I try to teach people in terms of like a big pivot, right? And I originally wanted to start in the online space, creating digital products and digital courses and things that people could consume. To me, that was like the epitome of scale, right? And I to kick myself in the butt, I enrolled myself in a business coaching program and a business mentorship program. And probably within a month, I realized that this vision was totally different than what I actually needed to do to capitalize on the skills that I had. And this is an entire lesson in alignment. What I was trying to pursue was fully misaligned with who I am and where my skill set is and where I really, really want to work. And so I've shifted very quickly to a personal brand and to being my own brand and to developing this coaching persona, because I knew that if I wanted to build digital products down the road, I could better leverage a personal brand first than I could if I had built the digital products and wanted to become more of a personal brand later. So this was the easiest and fastest way for me to build an online presence and to find my way in the online world, because for me, marketing is all about building relationships. And that's something I do really well and really easily. And so I just went the path of least resistance and shifted quickly to a personal brand and started marketing that way.
All right, awesome. Um, so let's go way back, like back to childhood, back to little Stephanie.
Oh dear.
You mentioned that you have always had an entrepreneurial spirit. It's just always been who you are. Um, when you were little, like, how did that manifest when you were really little? Like, what did you want to be when you grew up? When, before people tell you what's possible or not possible or anything like that, just on your own, what was that vision as a very, very, very young Stephanie?
I envision myself having my own company. And you know what's funny is that I remember sitting for hours and I would do one of two things. I would either make commercials. I would just like in my head, I would make these commercials where I was like, is it butter or is it margarine? And I would do this over and over and over again. So I had this real like marketing bent, or I would make forms. I would make forms for people to fill out. And the funny part about that is I own a software company, and the software product we've created is all about forms-based processes. So creating these forms-based processes. And I eventually ended up in the technology space doing business process engineering. And a lot of that was collecting data, transforming data. And it's exactly what I would do as a kid when I was sitting making forms for, and my poor parents, I'd be like, come in and fill out this form that I created for you. They're like, oh, really? Come on.
Can you
So,
remember any of like the things you did forms about as a young one?
oh gosh, anything that I could. I think it was mostly about pretending that I was in a doctor's office and somebody had to come and fill it. To me, the pleasure in filling out a form was amazing, and I'm sure for everyone else it was not. But when I was about 12 years old, I started up my first business as a clown that went to kids' parties, and I remember creating all of the flyers for it and figuring out going and buying all the stuff with my money at the dollar store and having all of the things prepared and what have you. And even back then it was, it didn't scare me, the idea of going out starting something, because it was more of an experiment. And the irony is that I hate clowns, and I'm terrified of clowns. And
I'm
that
guessing
was
your customers though had lots of forms to fill out before.
I think I actually did create one. Yep. In triplicate, the blue form and the pink form. But there was something about the collection of data, there's something about the collection of information that just I loved, and I loved being able to organize it and what have you. And it's really kind of funny that that ended up being the product that I actually created.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I had another question because we know each other pretty well, and I was like, oh, we should totally talk about this, but it's a little bit off topic. So I want to finish this one before we get on to the next one. Um, but so you went to school knowing what was interesting to you. You went to school and completed, and then you did have a job for a while, right? You said you were working
Mhm.
at a startup, but that was you were freelancing for a bit. Is that correct, or am I totally off on that?
I started out in startups from the very beginning in my career. I came out of university and went into the research park and worked for a software startup. And I think most of my jobs were in small startups and small businesses, with a couple of brief stints for, I worked as the IT manager for the Port Authority, and maybe one other stint in government. But for the most part, was working for small boutique startups and consulting agencies until I started my own.
Cool. And was there anything that you kind of had to that you expected when you started your own that didn't really work out that way? Like, I think sometimes I think sometimes when people transition from working for small companies or agencies, I see this a lot with marketing agencies and digital media and things like that, where employees jump ship and start their own, and then it's like, oh, well, that's not as easy as it was, because when they were working for the company, they were doing, like, they didn't have to worry about getting
Yep.
the clients. And even if they were in the sales space where they did have to get a client, everything that was offered to the client was already established.
Right.
before they went searching for the client. So did you have any kind of transitional learnings or bumps that you're willing to share about what it was like to go into your own freelance consulting?
Absolutely. But maybe not what you might think. So I came out of the consulting world and have spent most of my life in the consulting world. And in that environment, especially working for startups and small businesses, you get a sense for how much is going on, and you have to be kind of entrepreneurial in that environment. So to me, selling, marketing, being responsible for driving my own business was not new to me. What I think the learning is that when you get into the place where you are now responsible for the health of the organization and everything rests on you, there are all these other things you need to be aware of. And although I kind of knew them peripherally, I didn't have all those balls in the air at the same time. And so I had to know about taxes, and I had to keep the bookkeeping going, and I had to keep the sales funnel full, and I also had to worry about people and the consultants we were bringing on. We had about 30 people in our consulting business, and they all needed to continue to be interested, and like these were all high-end consultants. So I had to find a way to make the work that we were doing and the environment interesting enough to keep them around. Plus, you had to deliver on the work, plus, 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 plus. So it was like this really immersive education. And although I sort of knew that that was going to be the case, getting in there and having to be part of that was tremendous, right? It was such an education. But I would say the biggest thing I took out of that first experience in my first business, which has continued to serve me as a coach and a strategist, is this big study of and realization that a business model is a thing. And if your business model is not working, your whole business doesn't work. It doesn't matter how much you can strong arm sales, and you're always going to be chasing your tail if your business model is not working. And what I realized with that first business was that the model we had developed and all of the things we had developed to support that model was always going to be chasing your tail. And when I finally figured that out, that's when I was able to walk away from it without feeling guilty, without feeling like I'd failed. The business is actually still running today, but it's owned by other people. But that business model was never going to work in the way that we had designed it, and I didn't have enough control over the company to be able to change that. So that helped me get this perspective that I think a lot of people don't have when they're coaches and strategists, that you can only get from running your own company and being able to connect the dots with the education and with the experience and with enough insight to know that business models matter more than anything. And that's the first thing I do with my clients now is we look at their business model and we look at all of the different pieces and how aligned it is before we go and we deal with anything tactical. Because if that's not right, the rest of your business is not going to be right. And I don't even want to deal with your tactics, right? We need to fix that first.
So good. And getting those foundations in order. I love
Mhm.
that. So with all of your responsibilities professionally and all of your shifts over the past decades, today in what you do, um, you not only have, like most people, like pretty much everybody, you not only have a professional life, but you have a personal life as well. And so, can we talk for a little bit about um, being and feeling fulfilled
Mm.
in your own personal things like hobbies, as well as an intimate relationship with your partner, as well as raising your children and anything else that you want to bring in? Because I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with. And some people will say, balance. And some people will say balance is ridiculous. And some people will say alignment. And some people will say all the different things. So can we talk about really in a day-to-day kind of way, how do you structure your life so that all of those areas you're fulfilled in? Because knowing you the way I do, this is something I really appreciate about you, is how you are able to, it seems at least from my perspective, have a full and complete experience of all of these different things.
Right. Well, I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. Sometimes it doesn't feel like that's the case, but there are a few different things that I would say. One of them is that structure is freedom, right? And being really clear and structured about the way you do your work is what's going to enable you to have the freedom that you want to do all the other things, whatever that might be. And that's work I do with my clients as well, is they have goals, they have objectives, they know how they want their life to be. And rather than just coaching them on their business, we take their business and we figure out how we can use that business to make the rest of their life work for them. And some people are happy working 40 hours, and some people want to work 20, and some people want to work 30, and some people, so we take these sort of three legs of their stool, and I've done this with myself as well. And we said, okay, if what I have to offer to my business is, X, and I want to make Y in terms of money, then I have Z, which is my pricing. And so we're going to shift all those things around until we have a business model that works. So I eat my own dog food, right? And I've done the same thing with myself. But more than anything, I think what's really important is being clear on what you value. So for some people, it is being able to, I don't know, to go to yoga every day. And for some people, it's travel. And for me, it was, I wanted everything, right? I wanted to be able to do everything I want to do and not be held back. And that's just a bit of my personality, right? I'm a bit of a rebel. But I wanted the great relationship, and I wanted to be able to spend time with my kids, and I wanted to travel, and I want freedom, and I want the flexibility. So I had to look at what those things were and prioritize them and decide what that looked like for me. So for me, getting away and traveling as much as I can is a huge value for me. So how could I structure my life so that that could happen? It was really important for me to be able to spend time with my kids as soon as they came home from school. I wanted to be able to pick them up from school, which I had never been able to do in the early days. And I didn't even know their teachers. I didn't know who their friends were. I had none of that. It felt really crappy. So one of my rules is that I don't work after I pick my kids up from school at 3:00. And so these are about creating rules in your life and sticking to them. And if I tried to create a rule around something that didn't really matter that much to me, like going out and playing baseball, I don't care about baseball, so I wouldn't stick to it, right? It wouldn't matter to me. So being really clear about the things that matter to you, if you create those boundaries around those things, that's super important. And here's the other thing: is we're not saving lives, right? This isn't brain surgery. And if my client doesn't hear back from me until tomorrow, who's going to care? Nobody's going to care. So being really clear on the realities of your business, being really clear on what it is that you actually want is number one. I took a break from relationships because I was failing at them miserably. And what I did is I got really clear on what I wanted. And I got really clear on what I was going to accept, what I wasn't going to accept in my life. And when that finally came around for me, I knew it. I knew it, and I went for it, and it happened because I got really, really clear on what that needs to be. So I think taking the pressure off yourself, we have this monologue, this story when we're entrepreneurs about this, like, oh, I got to work every day. I got to work all the time. I got to work. And oh, poor me, I'm the busy entrepreneur. That's a bunch of BS, right? It's totally a bunch of BS, because all you're doing is you're saying you don't have the guts, you don't have the insight into your life to know what matters to you and what doesn't matter to you. Because if you don't take care of the rest of your life, you're not living, right? You don't fall into that trap of saying, I need to work all the time because that's just what you do as an entrepreneur. It's not. It's not at all. I work hard. I'll work on weekends sometimes, but it's because I also have a schedule during the week that allows me to do what I want to do and have this life, right? Now, it didn't come overnight. This was really, really intentional. But setting that intention and being clear about what your intention is, and I don't mean even from a woo-woo perspective, I mean just like, this is what manifestation really is. It's about deciding what you're going to do and then aligning everything you do to making that happen.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. And there was something you just said about that if a client doesn't hear from you until the next day, who cares? Can we talk a little bit about boundaries in working with clients? Because some people might be listening and thinking, who cares? My clients are down my throat if I don't get back to them in a certain matter of time or what have you. And I think this is something that we've all dealt with, and also is it tends to be an evolution of when people are truly getting that freedom, that happiness, that success that everybody wants so much. I think it only comes after we're able to really get clear on who we actually want to work with and
Mhm.
being able to turn down more work than we take on. So, can you talk a little bit about how that has happened for you and what you share, maybe also with your clients, to give us maybe a little bit of a takeaway? So if anybody's listening, and I mean, for me, it's been an evolution, and I get better and better all the time. And I'd love to say I'm never going to work with the wrong client again. I could be totally wrong, but I know how to deal with it now in a way that I didn't understand a few years ago. And I think that this, for me, has been key in my passion for what I do and keeping that passion going rather than burning me out. So, whatever you've got on that, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, and let me be really clear. I'm a stickler for customer service, and I treat my customers like gold, like they are the number one thing for me. But what I'm saying is that we put so much pressure on ourselves, saying if they email me, I have to be back to them within an hour. That's not true. Your clients are also busy and they are also doing things. So if you have to batch your responses until next tomorrow morning, chances are, you know, like you said, you're not saving lives. You're not, and unless maybe you are, but you are training people how to treat you and how to work with you. So if you are always the victim of everyone else in your external environment, it's because you have created that situation. It's because you have made that happen. So there are a lot of different ways you can set. It's all about setting expectations with people. So I set expectations with my clients that I'll get back to them within 24 to 48 hours, right? And that means that on weekends, I don't commit to responding to emails. I don't commit to being in my group and responding to questions and posts in my group. But my clients are getting served and they're happy, right? So this is all about setting expectations. And think about it. If you go into an environment and the person you're working with says, so this is how things are going to go, and these are my expectations, is I'm going to be available from this time to this time, then you say, okay, great, right? But if you don't set those expectations right off the bat, with a strong onboarding letter, with a contract, with even just a conversation, then you are going to be a victim of your own in your own situation, your own circumstance, right? So what I've learned is that by setting expectations with clients right off the bat, you get a lot more freedom and you get a lot less stress in your own life. And also, the way that you behave, the way that you talk about yourself, the way that you engage with potential new clients is all an opportunity to filter out the people that you don't want to work with. I learned a really, really hard lesson last year that when people come to me and they say, I need to make more money, that is not a client I want to work with because they won't do the work, right? And they're looking for a magic pill and they have this desperation versus determination. So listening and being really cognizant of what people are saying to you is really, really important because you can start to mirror back in your marketing and in your copy and in the way that you behave to the people that you don't want to work with, that this is something else and it's not for them. Or if to the people you really want to work with, they're hearing their language, they're seeing their own tendencies in the way that you're speaking and the pricing you set forward. And all of this is all about building a brand that attracts the right people, repels the wrong.
Amazing. Thank you for that. So we are coming close to the end, and before we do, I want to make sure people know how to reach you. But before we talk about that, do you have anything you'd like to share that I haven't asked you about that you think would be that somebody needs to hear right now?
You can have anything that you want. And that is not rah, rah cheerleader BS. That is actually true. It is just a matter of being really clear about it and setting your attention to get it done, because there is a way. There is a way. My clients will come to me and they'll be like, well, I've got this crazy idea, but I don't really think. And I'm like, yeah, you can. It's all about how committed and determined you are to get it. So you can have whatever you want, and make sure you know what you want, because if you build a business that isn't what you want, it will never succeed, and you will have a lot of friction and your energy won't be in that. So you can have anything that you want.
Brilliant. And if my people want to connect with you further, continue the conversation, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can go to stephaniehayes.biz/Nicole Holland, and they can sign up for a free strategy call, and we can talk about where they're at right now. And I also have links on that page to all of my channels, so you can check out some of the stuff that I'm producing.
Fantastic. Stephanie, thank you so very much for being here today. It's always such a pleasure to get into conversation with you and to share you with my people.
Thanks for having me, Nicole. It was fun.